All right, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to start the general membership meeting. We're a little late. Apologize for that. We'll try to go fast. As chair, I will always be trying to go fast. I understand everybody has other things to do, has work today, wants to get home. Some people might not have babysitters like myself. So we're just gonna start just with some basic ground rules. These are the same things that were announced at the elections, the previous meeting. We do plan on reviewing this, discussing it. We'll have open comment for it, hopefully. But please respect all the participants, speak for yourself, listen for understanding, agree to disagree, share the space, and please respect one person talking at a time. What will not be tolerated is harassments, any threats of violence whatsoever, any sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, or other discriminatory language intentionally thrown around. That will be a disruption. Any insults or shaming or any disruption of the process, that will be disrupting the meeting. A person gets one warning and then they will be asked to leave. I include shoving cameras in people's faces or doing anything or confronting people aggressively to be anything along those lines. And we will not hesitate to ask people to leave. So I hope all of that is absolutely unnecessary and we can just go by it. So I assume most people came to the elections, so I don't know if there's extensive introductions necessary. So we're just going to go around the room, just say your name, maybe where you're, the area you're from, and what brought you out here tonight. So, my name is David Lynn. I am the recently elected chair of the Neighborhood Association. I live by 81st and Holiday, and I'm really interested in outreach, getting a newsletter, and some event planning for the Neighborhood Association. So.
I'm Amanda Rhodes. I'm the vice chair as of a few weeks ago, and new to the board. I live south of Stark. My interests are, well, I'm focusing on land use right now. We'll see where it goes.
I'm Briar Rose Schreiber. I'm the secretary, which is why if you see me typing lots of notes, that's what I'm doing. I tried to get our Facebook live streaming up today, but everything worked except the internet, so hopefully next time we'll get that going.
I'm Antigonus, and just here today. Oh, I missed one.
My name is Micah Fletcher. I'm a member of the Montavilla Neighborhood Board, and I participate in the process.
Hey, I'm Olivia Louise. I live by Bridger. I am the representative to Southeast Uplift. I'm really excited to brief y'all on my first board meeting there. So.
I'm Jonathan Ogden. I'm sure some people know me. I've been involved with the board for a little bit, but this is my first elected term. I'm glad to see everybody here. It's a good turnout.
I'm Johnny. I'm the treasurer, and yeah, I'm glad to see everyone here. It's a good turnout for a regular meeting.
We want to go around the room? Go ahead.
I'm Paul Rowland, live near 88th and Stark.
Great.
I'm Brandon Arzillo. I live similar area, and I'm interested in just kind of seeing what's going on in this neighborhood, and a lot of things have piqued my interest lately. So, yep, that's why I'm here. Thank you.
I'm Alyssa Hill. I live by both of you guys. I'm here just to involve. This is my first meeting, so well, thank you.
I'm Josh Knappman. I live down on Everett.
Welcome.
I'm Louie. Oh, I'm Louie. I've been in the community for 8 years now, in the board previously, and been doing a lot of grassroots organizing. I'm interested in the Housing and Homeless Committee, along with continuing the Anti-Racist Neighborhood Watch, among other things running.
I'm David Only. I live at 81st and Burnside. I'm here to see what kind of committees I can get involved with.
Awesome.
Great.
I'm coming for you.
Patrick Aragon, 87 Police, and
Excellent.
I'm Chris Ollinger. I'm carrying a table.
I'm Mary Jane. I live on 80th across from the old Davis Funeral Home. We came back after several years away, so I'm just trying figure out what's going on in Montavilla right now.
And I'm Brad, and Mary Jane and I live in the same place, right behind Vestal. And I'm just here because I'm just enjoying the process and getting to meet everybody and getting to hear everybody's side of things. It's really been interesting and enjoyable to find everybody's story.
Thank you. You want to start in the back there?
I'm Liz Donahue. I live on 87 Eaton Street.
I'm Brad Donnie.
Annie Byram, live at near 94th and Houston.
Alex, I live at the same place.
Lindsay Johnson, I'm also at 94th and Gleason.
Phil Glennon, 86.
I'm Jessica Triplett. I live over on 83rd and Pacific. I've been involved here and there in the last year with the housing and homelessness group.
Robert, I'm on 87th and Upper.
I'm David. My cousin, I don't live here, I live downtown, but my cousin lives in part of the bus ride. So I do
Eileen Aramore, I just moved here from Hermiston. I'm on 70, Northeast 79th, and I'm just interested in a little bit.
I'm Eric. I don't live here, but I do work here as at an assisted living home.
Jeff Church, I think everyone knows
You want to start here in the front? Why don't you start this table?
I'm Lucy. I live at 81st and Multnomah.
I'm Jonathan. I live on 94th, and I'm still pretty new to the neighborhood.
My name's John. I've been in the neighborhood for about 6 years now, and I'm interested in public safety.
I'm Kevin Provo. I live on 80th, and this is my first meeting.
I'm Alexander Wilkins. I live at Montavilla 5, and I'm interested in neighbor journalism. I run a website called villageportland.com. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Yana Carroll. I live about 78th and Stark, and I'm excited to do our last duty as the elections committee tonight.
Wonderful.
I'm Nate. I live off Clay Street, and the thing that brought me here was just to find out a little bit more about my community and see what I can do to help, and not just that, see what everything is going on so we can make sure we make a great community.
Excellent.
My name's Johnny. I'm on Clay Street. I'm just public safety.
Sarah, who lives on Clay Street.
Where did you, Clay Street?
I'm on Clay Street. Amy Rainey, 81st and Washington.
Great. I think we got everybody there.
Sorry, Robin. Here we go first.
I think it's kind of just presumed. Okay. I'll just let.
Okay. Just wanted to double check that.
Andrew is recording the meeting, and he'll probably post it later. If anyone doesn't want to be on the screen, just let him know, and he can kind of.
I can not film you. I can blur out your face, one of the two, and I have a card if you want to see it later.
Thanks, Andrew.
Great. So we had the elections committee report. We wanted to make sure to get that done and give them as much time as possible. So.
Are you guys ready? Yeah, we can come back.
No problem.
I think we're waiting on an extension cord.
No, it's good.
Okay. Like 5. Yeah.
Okay, cool. We're just going to go through a quick rundown of updates from the officers. I will start that. It's been a very interesting month, to say the least. There's been a lot of difficulty getting things transitioned from the previous board and getting us all just set up, getting everything, running smoothly. So it has been a little slow going with that, but we're making strides. We're getting the bank account squared away. We're getting the email and website squared away, making sure that the neighborhood association actually owns all of its assets. and has control over it. Mostly, other than that, I'm hoping just to do some strategic planning here in the next 2 months in December and January. And that's about it.
And so vice chair report, I've really got no report. You can see this agenda is like 3 minutes on everything and there's so many different things. So we're trying to hit the ground running and we've got a lot of different things that we need to kind of get settled. And then after that, I'm really excited to getting to know all of you and getting some of this work done. So not much of a report, I get it, but there's some things. If you want to, Annette?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Do you want to go first, Ron? Since yours might be shorter.
Oh, mine is shorter. So the neighborhood association currently has no approved budget. So in the next month, that'll be what I'm working on, a budget proposal. Currently, our checking account has $6,155.31. Our savings account has $2,705.65. And our last purchases were the snacks for the election.
So I have a bit of a longer secretary update. There's been some stuff that happened that I think people want to know about. So I'm just going to cover it first. The big thing I want everyone to know, though, is that I think that we, as a board, have risen to the challenge of trying to get everything set up in a very short amount of time. It's been about 22 days since the election, and even less time since we've actually been officers. I think that we, as officers on the board, didn't actually even get access to our emails until, like 12 days ago. In the last 12 days, we've had quite a lot happen. I've tried to take an account, and I could pass this around after I'm done just going over it so you all can see it. I have put together a digital asset list of what we have that is under our control and what the M&A has to own, which includes our domain name, the G Suite, which has our emails and docs, the M&A Facebook page and group, the M&A Twitter, and the M&A website, which I recently relaunched, although we do have backups of the old one. So today, when we talk about our committees, perhaps that's something we can look into, what we want to bring back from the old page and go on in there. There was also, after we had gotten access to the board, there were some documents that ended up outside of the board's purview, and we were wondering how those documents got out of our email, so I took it upon myself to just try to figure out where that might have happened. At 10:35 on November 6th, I found that there was an email address that none of us controlled. After looking into it further, it looked as if there were a number of regular logins from an automated script, which is pretty normal for a web page. However, there were also a lot of logins from a place called nordvpn.com, which is a service that says that they never log what you do and where you go on the internet. So if anyone asks, the best we can do is shrug our shoulders, and we look and we like it that way. Along with those logins, there were a number of logins from the board member that set that up. And then inside of that email account, a number of emails have been forwarded to a past board member on August 9th when the board member was no longer a part of the board. So obviously that's a security issue just in the different types of emails that we might get. We want to make sure that we're protecting everyone's privacy, but at the same time we also want to have transparency. So we're going to talk about some different things that we can do throughout this meeting, and hopefully we can work on that going forward, where we can have transparency of the things that should be public, and we can make sure that neighbors' privacy is still held. We also received 2 records requests, which I have been working with Southeast Uplift and ONI to look into. I got some information back from ONI because both of them were fairly broad, asking for all documents belonging to the M&A, which as a new secretary, I wasn't actually sure where all the documents even are. So I've been trying to compile all those. Paul Listener from ONI told us that the neighborhood associations are not subject to Oregon state public meetings and record laws. Neighborhood associations are subject to the open meeting and public records requirements and the ONI standards for the neighborhood system. The M&A is responsible to any public records requests for M&A records, and they should follow the requirements in the ONI standard. So I'll be bringing a motion later in one of the agenda items to make it so our records that ONI asks for and their guidelines are open, and I actually think we should go beyond that and be more open. And for those papers, in order, just so we don't go broke printing off tons of stuff, I put in an amount of money for that. We can adjust that. Right now it's a fraction of what the county charges for the exact same service. And yeah, I think that we're doing pretty well handling all of that, and I hope that we can get all this tied up so we have a really nice, great neighborhood association where all of our paperwork is in order and easy to follow for the next group that comes through. I'll pass around my stable list if any of the other board members don't want to read theirs right now. If you want to pass it around to others, that might be helpful as well.
Awesome.
Awesome job.
Awesome. So I'm the Southeast delegate, Southeast Uplift delegate, and we had our first board meeting, which was really great. It's if you don't know, the district coalition comprises, there's 7 across the city. There's 95 neighborhood associations, but there's 7 district coalitions. Southeast Uplift has undergone a lot of changes, so Molly Mayo's relatively new, came in on the summer, and they've been looking at some big picture changes, for instance, changing the mission statement. There's also like a lot of really cool stuff going on there. I want to make it clear that even though I represent Montavilla, any of y'all can actually join at any given moment and take an interest in what's going on at the district coalition. Some things that happens is that people come to Southeast Uplift with resources that they send to me, that I can try and delegate that to y'all and make those resources and dates and workshops available. I'm hoping to talk more with when we can finally talk about the communications committee, getting those out to y'all either by Facebook or with emails, because there's a lot of dates and there's pretty much endless stuff I can talk about. Some things that pop up right now are that they have a grants workshop coming up. They have grants that are due or that they finally decide in January. So if you're interested in getting a grant from Southeast Uplift, you can attend one of their workshops November 16th and another date in December. There's also a grant coming from the city, which is a watershed program. It's called the Community Watershed Stewardship Grant Program. The deadline is February 2nd, but once again, there's a workshop for y'all to get access to that money, have an easier chance applying. Some of these grants actually are as high as $10,000. So if there's any interest in local projects concerning watershed stewardship, is kind of vague, so you might need more information online. But they said items that they were considering were things like vertical gardens and some bioswales. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I'd be happy to coordinate that. Last but not least, Laura from Vibe Portland. If any of y'all have kids, Vibe is this awesome creative arts studio, and they actually work with Bridger. They kind of travel around to schools where we know arts are getting less money more and more as time goes on, and so they're trying to supplement that. They opened a new space at Tabor Space, which is an art studio, and they're having a tree sale the first 3 weeks of December, starting actually on November 24th. This is how they're going to be fundraising locally. They want to let you not only know that they're having a tree sale, tabling, but that you guys can use their studio space at any given time. Once again, hoping to get this information out by email, or you guys can talk to me after the meeting, and I can help write down these dates for y'all.
Thank you. Does anyone
Had a
else
lot.
have
It's
any,
a lot,
any other
actually.
board members have any updates or announcements? No, Mike? You good? Okay. Election report, we ready?
Yes,
Excellent.
absolutely. Hi, everyone. So, we're going to try and do this as fast as we possibly can. I know it's a gigantic PowerPoint because it's basically our report for the board, also just in the form of a PowerPoint. It includes a whole bunch of details about the work that we did, and not because we want to go, oh my gosh, it was so much work and we're whiny or anything, but so that people have some sense of the scope and the approach that we took. I'll say it a million times, but I cannot say enough about the work that Amy and Robin in particular did on this. So, wow, yes. Okay, here we go, the basics. We sat down and talked quickly about our approach, which is to remove all barriers possible, plus really be responsive to the things that the board had brought up about how they wanted to be looking at things. And given all of the challenges, I think our committee says, yep, we nailed it. Here are some basics about the outcomes of the election, the participation numbers. Can people read that in the back, or should I say it out loud? Okay. I see some head shaking. There were 228 non-guest or intended voters that signed in, 6 children with parental consent forms for them to become members of those 28, sorry, 6 were children, and 5 were registered with a business license rather than as a resident, or claiming to have a business license rather than as a resident. 3 of them had signed into previous meetings before with a different address. 1 had no previous record of attending an MNA meeting. 223 regular ballots were distributed and 5 provisional ballots were distributed. Provisional ballots, I see a look on people's face. Provisional ballots are for folks who either didn't live within the boundaries, 3 people who showed up after the cutoff time and had no record of being a prior member, and 1 person who misplaced their ballot and got a second replacement provisional ballot. Attendance by zip code, 28% came from 213, 28 from 215, 27 from 216, and 17 from 220. The participation in the election itself, 222 votes were cast, 219 what would be called regular ballots, and 3 of those provisional ballots were cast. 1 blank ballot was also returned to Southeast Uplift. There were 22 nominees. 8 candidates received majority votes from the members, which is what the bar is to be elected. And on average, each member cast a vote for 8.9 candidates. Here's the final results counted and certified by Southeast Uplift and ONI of the candidates. I'm not reading all of those numbers. Sorry, people in the back. Tell me when to hit move. Okay, we had some early obstacles. The current board was really limited because there was family emergencies and people who were leaving, and basically 1 person who was fully doing their duties. We have some suggestions for the board based on what we found early on, setting up the elections committee. Membership lists, or we started to call it button, who's got the button? I don't know, I might be old, you might not remember that game. There was an outgoing board secretary who I had never met because they hadn't come to a meeting that I had been to, who had not yet turned in the sign-in sheets nor the updated membership list, and we had some struggles with trying to get that list. So we had an older, much more limited list that we were working with in the beginning. We have suggestions for the board in our dealing with that situation as well. Prior to the September meeting, the work of the committee, so we thought we'd set our goals and the scope of work, and boy howdy were we wrong about the scope of that work. These are some of the things we did. Reviewing those limited membership lists. Our team member Amy joined this committee saying, I'll do data work, I'll do list work, and then got completely recruited into doing all of the other things. Yay, Amy. And Robin, in her amazing design work, even in a flash, was able to put together the flyers that we put out for the September 11th meeting. At this point, we thought that we were going to have a full membership list prior to the meeting, have it all ready, and be able to run your standard meeting. So, hey, come to this thing. It's your last chance to register, was what was going on there. There wasn't a particularly high turnout at that meeting, but we did get the flyers out. Yay. Then the work of the committee continued into late August and early September. More requesting of those lists over and over again. Recommendations for how the ballot would be looking like, handling the need for adding in the staggered terms, what the process might look like, working with ONI on some issues that popped up with the legitimacy or not of third-party non-M&A group collecting online membership, drafting proposals, and conducting the election without an update membership list because we realized that just was probably not going to happen. So thus the you must come to a meeting prior to the election meeting. So in order to be as open as possible and not limit people, because we didn't have the full list, people were able to register same day because it was still prior to, but let me tell you, we do not recommend you doing that unless you absolutely have to. And so we presented that new proposal to the board and to the members that were in attendance at this particular meeting, that particular meeting. And they said, proceed. Post-September meeting, there was more work. And yeah, for real, we do have full-time jobs. Election FAQs, long version, FAQ, short version for the election mail notice that went out to the list that we had at the time. More requesting of those membership lists. Drafting ballots, sign-in sheets, etc. Outreach gets its own slide. Amy had this great idea of having a facilitator for the election meeting, yay. And then the list came in and Amy started her real work in reconciling the multiple formats and different kinds of information that were on all of those membership lists. Amy is my hero. Here are some of the fabulous flyers that Robin put together. Meeting turnout work. One is a flyer and one is a poster, I should say. Meeting turnout work. The FAQ and members and election notice was sent to the members. There was an ad in Southeast Examiner, street routes, on screen at the Academy Theater. Those flyers and posters were designed, printed, and distributed. Thanks to all of the neighbors who helped with that process. Information about how and where to get these printed flyers and posters were shared on the M&A Facebook, and printable flyers and posters were shared on the Facebook and the M&A webpage. That little note down there is for Robin. It's the since you asked, we didn't do any of the work with Facebook or the website or the email platform directly because we didn't, as the elections committee, have access. And most all of the costs that came through were carried by the elections committee, who will be reimbursed. We will. Okay, then there was those last 3 days. We thought we were all ready. We had a good deal of work to be done all of a sudden about the space and the safety. Almost lost our venue here when we had a right-wing provocateur group announced that they planned to attend our election. We had to do some clarifying for the process for children voting with the help of Southeast Uplift and ONI and what those rules really were. Sound system, extension cord, flip cord, all of the things. Last minute change to the sign-in process to secure individual information and speed up the process. Each person having their own sign-in sheet rather than having to have everybody either pass it and who knows where that thing went, or wait as you went up and actually have to fill out the thing once you got up there. And then last minute tweaks to the voting procedure, realizing that people may actually need to vote and leave prior to the speeches being over, making sure that that was an opportunity that was basically changing the directions to the election that were on the ballot itself. Therefore, we were hanging out at Kinko's and running in here with all of those things at the very last minute. And other people were ordering pizza and doing great things like that the days before. Thank you. Post-election, the work of the committee was feeling really strongly for those who have to interpret handwriting. Oh, thank you. Checking all the unclear information from the prior membership list, entering all of the sign-in sheet data, all those 228 people, and looked up. We didn't quite map we only did the percentage of the zip codes. And then we wrote this thing. Our final suggestions are long, therefore the board, and this is not to say that we think the board hasn't thought of a lot of these things. They probably really have. But some of them are clarifying the understanding and intent of the language, allowing children with no age limit to become members and vote with parental approval. Balancing that you might have an election with a turnout of 250 to 300 people, or you might have a next election with 14 people showing up in the room and people being begged to run, figuring out how they're going to address the questions such as like, should they produce a neutral candidates guide or not? Clarifying the process for exceptions to membership boundaries and the expiration or reversal of said memberships. There isn't anything we can find that's clear about that process. Clarifying areas and activities acceptable for electioneering at the meeting site. Consider the need to recruit and train volunteers who would not be simultaneously electioneering to work in a line of members who are able to explain the sign-in elections process. Communicate clearly with Southeast Uplift the process for conducting the election and counting the ballots. And recruit fresh volunteers, if you want to count them that night, who had not had a job earlier in the evening to count the ballots, witnessed by members of the Elections Committee in Southeast Uplift, if the board deems that necessary. I'm talking fast. Shout outs. Everybody, there were so many people that helped out, but particularly this space, and sticking in with us when it looked really potentially hairy. Shane for making and donating all those fantastic buttons. I hope you all got one. I'm sure there might be a couple of leftovers, and for PA system and everything else. Chris, always with the power strips, and a lot of flyer and poster distribution and all of the other things. And particularly for standing outside behind the last person who arrived at 7 p.m. so we knew where the cutoff was, and who had to get those provisional ballots. David for his early work in the committee. David O for getting those pizzas, East Gleason for the pizzas. Southeast Uplift staff for all of the work that they did, particularly at the very last minute with people in technical support. Jonathan for trying to cover all of the duties of all of the board members. Our fabulous facilitator, neighbors who distributed leaflets and pitched in on election day, and everyone who stood out there in the cold and that's in here in the sweltering hot. I was so incredibly impressed at how many people stayed for every single one of the speeches. We were completely expecting that as soon as the numbers went up to be able to fill out your ballot, that people were just gonna stream down there, and they did not. Yes, the tenacity and good humor, for the most part, of everyone that night makes me really glad to live here. And we're done.
Thank you.
Except interpreting our data entry and answering any questions. Board has.
I just really want to offer a huge thank you, because everything that you friends did is what got us to where we are now. And I know how hard it was, and I was especially blown away by the wonderful posters that I saw all over the neighborhood, that I think were made by Robin.
Southeast Uplift gave us some great graphics.
Yeah.
Excellent, well, thank you very much. I think we move on. And now, I believe we have nominations. We have 3 open board positions currently. We will take any nominations from neighbors or members. You have about 2 minutes to say something. and then I'll catch up. But if anybody would like to self-nominate themselves, and then the board will deliberate those nominations in the board meeting.
Are there specific positions that are open, or are these just like at large?
Currently, there's no executive officer positions open, but we will be having committees here soon open up on the, later in the meeting.
Or are those two different things?
And we do, like, people, if you want to chair a committee, like public safety or like communications or something like that, we would certainly want you to be on the board to do that. So if you intend to chair a committee, I would strongly recommend that you nominate yourself for a board position too. I don't think it's a deal breaker if they're not.
So then can we hear the committees, so we know who?
Well, right now, the committees are kind of open. It's kind of whatever people want to organize around. The basic ones, and I think one of the most important ones, is communications and outreach. That covers so much, from newsletter to website communications, online presence, branding, messaging, all that sort of things. Event planner, block parties, liaisons to other associations, business associations. That is one of the biggest committees, and I'm really hoping to get a lot of people signed up on that tonight. Public safety, I've heard several people mention, is an interest of theirs. Land use is a committee that sometimes people organize and get together with, where we periodically get land use applications sent to the association, and that committee deliberates it, and sometimes if it's timely, can even take a position on it. And I believe we have also had a proposal for homelessness.
The Housing and Homelessness Committee.
Housing and Homelessness Committee. Yes?
What board members are currently chairing the specific committees or?
We have not had time to appoint chairs to any committees yet, because the last board meeting, we just constituted board positions and didn't have time to move on to committees. And we really wanted to give people a chance to sign up too, so you have a sense of who you're working with and how much support you might have.
And that is on the agenda later.
So, yes?
Real quick, clarify, elections committee, is that another one that's gonna be happening now, or is that just in the foreseeable future when elections are happening again?
I think that's something that's constituted about a few months prior to the election itself.
Okay.
I don't think, aside from maybe synthesizing or kind of elaborating on the recommendations of the elections committee, I think we might be of course I mentioned strategic planning, but we also might have a bylaws review committee if we wanted to do something like that. So,
Which could be ad hoc for as long as it's needed, and then.
yes.
Did I miss it? Did you mention the idea of a membership committee? Membership, just general outreach, increasing membership, membership engagement.
I would count that under communications and outreach. So I will entertain any motions or self-nominations for board position.
Yeah. Hello, my name is John Rotter, and I would like to self-nominate myself for safety committee, or the public safety spot.
And a board position?
Yes.
Do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Oh, okay. Yes, I've been involved, I've lived in Portland all my life. I've been involved in a lot of public organizing, a lot of activism in the community, just helping to build things. Some of the things I've done, for example, are go down to New Orleans after Katrina and help rebuild the community down there. There's an organization which I'm very proud of that's still in existence called Common Ground. Their website is Common Ground Relief. I helped form that. Since then, they've turned into a nonprofit, and they've helped up to 35,000 plus people with all kinds of education, safety, just reclaiming the community and building it back up. So a lot of that. Things I would like to do in the community here is I would like to promote more people taking tours of the neighborhood, walking around, kind of like meeting other people. Just kind of checking things out, so if there's something going on, people know about it. I would like to expand the warming shelter program. It's gonna be a cold winter. I would make sure that's gonna be pretty successful. I I would like to work with the neighborhood emergency teams a little bit more, help organize them. We just kind of incorporated a few other neighborhood associations and net teams together, and they're working really well. I would like to get that working, better together, kind of streamline it a little bit. Let's see. I would like to work on like emergency shelter and medical, like have like a free clinic, something where people can go to if they don't have any resources available and they need something right then and there. And I would like to promote neighborhood social events for safety and get the community involved. So.
Excellent. Would anyone else like to volunteer?
I'm Lucy Elizabeth. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of me. I would like to nominate myself for a board position. I'm really interested in neighborhood safety and security and programs that aid houseless folk, stuff like that. But the main reason I'm self-nominating is actually because I think that I've been hearing about a lot of people who may be trying to nominate themselves for positions whose views I believe to be toxic and opposite to what was voted for in the last election. I don't think there should be any space on the board for people who are in direct opposition to an election that had unprecedented turnout. Yes, thank you. And the vote went overwhelmingly in one direction. I feel that a lot of those people who are wishing to get on the board
Running out of time.
yeah, are diametrically opposed to that, and so I'm trying to block them, basically. And that's it.
Thank you.
Are we given opportunities to ask questions, or is that not the new agenda?
I think we're going to have board questions later on, but I think in the matter of we're already behind schedule, so I think it's just too much right now. Yes, sir.
So who will vote for these nominees? Will it be the board?
Yes, it'll be the board during the board meeting.
Yeah, so our bylaws specify that if there are unfilled positions, the board is able to appoint people to the board. We're not required to fill all the board positions, but they are, the board can be up to 11 people, and we've got 8 board members right now. And honestly, we have a lot of work to do, so we're, yeah, so we're looking for more help.
I was just curious, a thought came to me, on the numbers of that was put up by the Southeast Upwards, is it Robin? I'm sorry.
Yana.
What is it?
Yana.
Oh, Yana, I'm sorry. Was it ever considered that whoever, I don't even know who was because I couldn't read, whoever the next 3 were voted for would get the open positions? Is that considered? Because I'm sure they ran, they wanted to be on it, and it looked like from that presentation it was 8 people who were the majority. So then there's 3 who were just, I'm guessing, under the majority. So is that a consideration by the board?
We did discuss that at the previous board meeting. I wanted to, but I just have not had enough time to find their contact information and reach out to them. So I was hoping that they would have come to this meeting and self-nominate.
Oh, okay.
And really, I just haven't been able to follow up, following through on that. But I did think of that. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes, Cindy?
I'm Paul Rowland, and I might as well self-nominate. I ran. I was, I think, 5th below the threshold. I'm kind of tired. I'm not sure I gave a speech that night. Should be good enough. But I've been, anyway, a couple years ago I moved my mom from the East Coast and to that address or the area I specified earlier. And I've been, she's elderly, I've been basically taking care of her. She's fairly low maintenance, but I do all the, cooking, cleaning, and paperwork and everything. So I'm kind of looking for something to get out of the house, basically. I've been a community-minded, I'm a very local-minded person. I'm like a real scavenger. I'm always looking what the local fruit and nut trees. I think I mentioned that in my speech. I'd like to do more of that. I've been a gardener forever. I've been involved in community gardens at times. I'm interested in those sorts of things. It'd be interesting to connect like houseless people to gardening. I don't know. I'm just like to see what the possibilities. It seems like there's a lot of excitement among this board about the possibilities of neighborhood organizing and making things better. And given the speed at which our biosphere is collapsing around us, I do think we do need to take serious consideration about how locally to confront such things. So. Oh, and I do a show on cable radio every Wednesday morning at 8.
What was your name again, please?
What's that?
What was your name again?
Oh, Paul Rowland.
Thank you.
What's the show on? Wednesday Talk Radio.
Can I nominate for, is that allowed?
I'm sorry, over here.
So, I'm not running, I don't want to nominate myself. I do want to address the issue though of the finishers below the majority. My understanding was, and the records show, people voted for an average of 9 candidates. Nobody voted for, people did not vote for 11, and that was in part because I know when I explained voting to people, when I was out asking people to come and vote, I explicitly told people, vote for people you want on the board. Do not feel obligated to vote for 11 because there's got to be 11 people. Vote for only the people you would like to see on the board that you would think are a good board. And more so, since there is a rule that you need a majority, not voting for somebody is essentially a no vote for them. And that is what I think people voted knowing those rules. So it wasn't vote for the 11 that are most or least unpalatable or most palatable to you. So it is a referendum on whether you actually want people on the board or not. So I think the whole question of saying there was a vote and people didn't want certain people on the board means that you can leave it open. I don't know that I'm not the board, so I don't entertain what they should or shouldn't do. But I think going forward, you have initially a group of people who are able to meet a standard, and from there, maybe you figure out what you need, what you're lacking, new people, or potentially other people, but I don't think that there's some hard and fast rule that the next 3 people should be reached out to and placed on the board.
Okay.
People had an opportunity at that point in time to put them on the board and chose not to. So
Okay.
that's just my one man's perspective as somebody who worked a little bit on the voting in terms of making sure that people voted.
Okay, well, we will have some comment period, so if anyone has any other nominations, please. Yes, sir.
Hi. So regardless of that observation, I'd like to self-nominate in the stead of my wife Ruth, who was one of those 3, below the majorities. So my name is Brad Donahue. I'm a board member of a church that started about 4 years ago, and we wanted to move into commercial area to work with perhaps homeless people. And so we found a strip club that went out of business. And so we took it over, remodeled it, and started operating as a church. And we do have interaction with the community. I don't want to say that I'm an expert on homeless people. We're learning as we go. But we do have a relationship with the Hansen Center, which is on 122nd and it's, I think, a function of something called TPA, Transitional Project. And so in terms of providing help, perhaps we can find out how we could get one of those in our neighborhood. People just stay there, they have a place to stay during the night. So I guess that's about all, except I don't know what committee I'd want to be on, but I'm willing to kind of step in and do what's necessary. So I'm the treasurer on the board of this church, and I have a background in accounting. Thank you very much.
Okay, do we have any others before we move on? I'm not seeing any, oh.
I'm not self-nominating, but because I have other priorities now. I strongly encourage those who have been critical of the election, those who are perhaps not entirely pleased with the current makeup of the board, and that does not include me. I'm quite pleased. But if you're not, this is the time to speak up. This is the time to nominate someone or to self-nominate. Appreciate that. I just want to say that. I want to encourage it. I believe in diversity on the board, not just of backgrounds of male, female, LGBTQIA or not, but also of perspective. We need to learn to work together, to live together, all of us. And this is the time that it would be good to have, in my opinion, contrary to Lucy Elizabeth's view, this is the time to have good diversity of perspective on the board. So speak up or not, but if you don't speak up now, frankly, I would suggest that less complaining in the future would be appropriate.
I'd rather not. We can have side conversations about anything later on. So that'll wrap up the nominations, because I don't see any. See any more? Okay. So we do have just general membership comment period. We are running a little behind, and I'm really excited about getting to the committee open house. So if, I guess we'll entertain any kind of general membership comments at this time. Yes, Jan?
So I absolutely agree that it shouldn't just fall to the next three because the rules were the rules and it was fairly clear, and because people didn't vote for 11, but an average of less. But I also want to say that no commenting on any of the candidates at all, because that's not what I mean this comment to be. But I want to say that as a member of this community, I support the board in whatever they choose to do, whether it is fill these positions or not fill these positions, and that I think it is completely legitimate for the board, this board or any other board, to decide that they want to fill those positions based on the activities that people do. If you so choose, if the board decides not to fill these positions, I'm not going to be upset as a community member. If the board decides that they're going to fill them later based on the volunteerism that they see from folks stepping up and working on those particular committees and choose to do that later, I'm not going to be upset about that either. So good luck on your decision.
Great, thank you. Any other general comments to the board? Yes.
When would be an appropriate time to ask questions regarding the presentation with the election?
You can talk to them after the meeting at all, or if you'd like to send the board any questions afterwards, that's fine. Or if you just have comments right now.
Quick question, just would like to know, of the people that you said, the 224, how many people came to the election that were not registered to vote and did not vote? Do we have that data?
Is this after the meeting?
I'm sorry, Lucy, I wasn't speaking to you.
I'm sorry,
I'm not sure that I understand the question.
So of the people, that you had a number of all the people that voted, broke all that out so beautifully. I'm asking how many people came to the election that did not cast a vote and were not eligible to vote based on not being in the boundaries?
So everyone who came and asked to vote was at least given a provisional ballot. I think you're asking about the.
And I think you're answering my
one,
question. Yeah.
the 3 people who came later.
I'm not asking about provisional, I was just simply asking, of all the people who came, how many people came to the election that did not vote because they were not eligible because they do not live in Montavilla?
Can I try to answer that? Can I just say that 5 people were given provisional ballots? So 5 people came, wanted to vote, who we found not, potentially not eligible to vote. 3 of them were because they arrived late, not because of their address.
So just 2.
And 1 was because of their address, and 1 was because they lost their ballot.
And
so 1 is the answer.
No, the answer is 3 of those 5 people chose to cast their provisional ballots.
Okay, great.
So 2 people chose not to cast those provisional ballots.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing my question to be answered.
Was there not also a guest list of people who were at the meeting who did not?
There were more than 20 guests, but they were people who were not asking for ballots.
Got it. Okay, so there was like 20 and then the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Great, thank you very much for answering that.
Quick question, were the IDs checked or was there any proof of address needed?
No.
Okay.
There's no provisions in the bylaws for asking for IDs.
All right, with that, I don't see any other membership comments, so we're gonna do kind of just an open house here with the committees. We'll just kind of set up a couple boards around the room. I'm gonna be kind of hovering around outreach, and I suppose right around these 2 tables here. I was gonna put public safety, the one over, parks, if you're interested in parks over there. Where would you like to set up?
How about here?
Right there. Great. Well, so everybody take a stretch and.
Outreach is comms, yeah.
Yes, outreach and communications, unless it's so huge and overwhelmed with volunteers.
Do you have
we
slide
to-
sheets, or should I just
I have
use
a pretty
paper?
big, some big boards here.
Let's do land use over here. Put it in the middle.
Public safety, I think. Sure. Public safety, that.
I'll probably.
All right, well, we are going to start the board meeting now. So, if everybody could reconvene. We are about 20 minutes behind schedule, so we're going to hope to get this going. I was going to just start the first board meeting. I just had some notes that I was going to share. I am the board chair, but I do not decide who sits on the board. I cannot kick people off the board. I can propose it, but that's pretty much it. So I'm just going to say my expectation as the board chair of board members is that in any public forum, you are presumed to be seen as a board member of the MNA. In making any controversial statement in any public forum, it's expected that MNA board members will conduct themselves in a respectful manner and will be clear that they're not representing the official position of the MNA unless authorized by the board to do so. Board members will make every effort to ensure no neighbor feels threatened in any way. And I hope that...
Can we comment on that?
You certainly can.
Okay, I have a huge problem with the last section of that. I think that there's neighbors who feel threatened by me just for existing, and I'm not sure how I can go about being a neighbor or a person in the community. And just existing, well, people feel threatened and not threatened, but not have people feel threatened by mine.
I have been told by a neighbor that my existence as a trans person was dangerous to me.
Well, I think that the preface of effort, the effort on your part is all that is expected. It's not to be received. Trying to sound diplomatic about it doesn't matter how people perceive things, but as long as you make the effort, that's the best choice. That's all I want.
And we understand that the existing isn't threatening, that the way that they're looking at the world is fundamentally flawed.
True.
I do at least, I don't need to speak for the board.
What was the question right
Not a question, it's just general expectations of how board members present themselves in the public. And if they are in a controversial setting in a public forum and they're making controversial statements, that they either make clear that they're not speaking for the board unless authorized that they are speaking for the board. Did you have any comments or questions on that? Mike?
Yes, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Process. Okay. Is there any other comments from the board? Okay. First, approve the agenda and the past meeting minutes. For the agenda, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda. Need a second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, just to clarify, in case people didn't know, during the board meeting, the board is deliberating and only the board takes votes. So, just so everybody was clear what we're asking. Now we have past board meeting minutes. Which one's up?
So we got 5 sets of notes from the 5 past board meetings, most of us were not on the board at that time. So, yeah, so I was wondering, it seems to me like we're just trying to make a fresh start. These can serve as the record that we have, but I don't really feel comfortable approving them past the time. So, of course, I would like to talk about the October 22nd one, but for the other 4, can we just have these posted as draft notes, or is there any reason to get them approved?
Well, I don't think that would be necessarily different. You would say that these are approved as a draft, so it's not necessarily represent. We would basically say like we didn't have either the people there to verify to know that this is correct, or that the content is clear enough to determine after the fact that these are in fact from that meeting.
Yeah.
So yes, we could do that, and that would take care of it. We can approve the ones you're comfortable with and the ones that is draft.
Okay.
I have no problem with draft, but it's just getting them all approved on the record so that we don't have draft.
I can always abstain. For the October 22nd ones, can we talk about those?
I'm sorry?
Can we talk about the October 22nd ones? Can I get my name added to the list of board members in attendance? Thanks a lot, Jonathan.
I didn't take you out there. You did. Probably did. I'm gonna redline this.
Do you have any other changes?
Sorry, my printer is low on toner, so I only made one copy for the board to look at because I had to print some.
Do you guys want to look at another copy?
Any other objections?
There is. Where it says David Lynn nominated, you can throw in an N.
What is this a copy of?
It's the meeting minutes from the.
From
previous board
October
meeting.
22nd.
Sorry, which item was that, Amanda?
When David was nominated for chair, I think there was an
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter at all, though, since we're here.
Do we have any other corrections? Do you want more time to read it, Micah? You can abstain.
I will not read it later.
All right. I will entertain a motion to pass the minute, or approve the meeting minutes from October 22nd.
Second?
We'll make the motion.
Oh. I motion to pass, to approve the notes.
Second.
Second, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. list off the dates, please? And then, because these have all been sent around to the board, right? Okay.
So we've got the 14th.
August 14th.
August 14th, apologize, yeah. August 17th, August 29th. That's it.
And September 11th.
Oh, September 11th, yes.
Okay. Someone please move to approve all those minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Johnny made the motion, Megan is seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, great. Any more meeting minutes? Okay. Public records request policy. Has that been sent around?
Can you give me 1 second to catch up on the notes?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, Sarah, touch her.
Is there any extras for the audience?
I do not, but I could give them mine and share with someone else's just to go over really quick.
Okay. I just want to pass this around. This is just a draft guidelines. We have, since the 2 weeks we've been constituted, been getting several public records requests. So we are kind of trying to make a general policy guideline. And of course, my recommendation with this is always that we make something that makes it clearer or facilitates the process, but is not something that is simply used as something to bludgeon us with, because we didn't meet some technical threshold that we set for ourselves. So just to keep that in mind, I definitely hope that this can be something that helps us just make public records completely routine and quick.
So I'd like to bring a motion based off of that and what I talked about in my secretary update, which is what is being passed around. And I'll just read the text because it's fairly short, to try to deal with these records requests coming into the board with having everything kind of in disarray, and how are we going to handle this, and what are the regulations that can also keep everyone safe. So in accordance with the Office of Neighborhood Involvement Guidelines, Southeast Uplift direction, and M&A bylaws and procedures, the M&A Secretary is authorized to compile M&A records available for public review. M&A records required to meet ONI guidelines shall be compiled into physical documents available for review by the public or membership as required by law. The records shall be made available on the Montavilla PDX.org website and at all board meetings. The records shall be copyable by hand by any authorized individual who is reviewing the records. Obviously, if they're online, you could also get them otherwise, but because we had the mass copying of a lot of people's addresses, that's one method that we could possibly look at, is only allowing people to view those on a paper record and copying them by hand. The M&A Secretary is responsible for making sure that these files comply with ONI guidelines while protecting a reasonable level of privacy of members and directors. The M&A reserves the right to charge record requesters to cover costs for compiling requested records. The Secretary shall invoice the record requester for the cost of the record reproduction, plus a reimbursement for the M&A's time compiling the records at a living wage of $15 per hour for the labor provided. My understanding is that Multnomah County currently charges $25 for 15 minutes. I'm totally open to friendly amendments to adjust that to whatever anyone else would like. This is mostly just because of the scope of the public records that we got were so large. If we have to print out thousands of pieces of paper, we might not have it in our budget to stay afloat after that. So we need to have a way to be able to handle that while still having transparency. So I would like to move that we adopt these as our policy for dealing with our records requests, so we can have more things that are open. But I would love to discuss that.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. I have a thought, bullet point 2, where it says available at all board meetings. I wonder, would that open us to the Secretary not being absent with the records, and then somebody coming at us and saying we violated your policy by not having it on hand by me to give to me? Or is a meeting the best place to reproduce, or to handle a public records request like on the spot?
I think that if we have the option to have it available at board meetings, it needs to be requested ahead of time. That way we can prepare for such a thing.
This doesn't specify if it needs to be a physical copy, so in my mind, that's just having a downloaded copy on the device that we use for logins or something. probably a good idea.
The main thing I was actually trying to address at that point was just making sure that there was a reasonable time that we could meet with people to get them those records, because we all have day jobs, we all have things that are going on in our lives, and having to drop everything to go deliver records, we might not have time at a given time. So this is a very specific time every month where we could deliver them.
Oh, so then maybe, shall we made, okay, so maybe change this verbiage to be at the request, like Johnny has suggested, so that way you can just bring them to a specific place, a specific time is already sanctioned for that, right?
I would totally accept that from anyone, so.
Yeah.
Did you propose the wording?
No, I proposed the idea that we, I guess, add some verbiage to the bullet points suggesting that they would be available at board meetings given notice.
But again, that given notice, that just triggers it. There's no other, hey, our secretary's out of town.
Right.
Hey, we got a new board meeting, or we have a new board transitioning on. So I would just want to strike it at all board meetings. Or maybe just some caveat that gives us a little bit of wiggle room.
As long as the secretary is available.
Or just, and at a mutually, that's like agreed upon time or something, I mean, just keep it general.
Or, yeah, you could say or at a mutually
That's true.
agreed upon time, and then if it's not available at that time, then you reach out to that person and then do it that way.
And that can end up being board meetings, but it doesn't necessarily hold us to that. The other part of, can I move on a second? The other part of that bullet point that concerned me is we've had a lot of conversation about member records and member list versus just general like past meeting notes and other things. So, and you know, some of the one of the requests was asking for all the board communications, and that's not something that we'll just have up on the website. Like I want to, you know, we should push as much as we can to the website, but so maybe be more specific and just than just saying the records shall be made available, because we're not going to have all of that.
I worded it that way specifically because that's how the ONI guidelines say it. They say the records and then they have a definition of what the records is, which is kind of ambiguous, but I wanted to use their wording because I want to make sure that we're within their standards and can adapt if the interpretation of that from ONI changes in the
So, just out of curiosity, not to whittle down too deep into details, but what's the itemized list of all the records that could be requested publicly? Because in my mind, we just might set up systems to make them publicly available all the time. Like for our communications, if we're using Slack, you can make it public. There's a lot of ways we can just post it.
So there is a set list of things that need to be public, such as our bylaws, our articles of incorporation, meeting minutes, grievances, and a couple of other things that I can remember. The members list upon request and with reason, specifically for the different fields in that, such as home addresses, can't be requested for people to mail everyone. That's not a reason that the people could request that. So those records, and then ONI defines records as anything, any business of the board that works towards dialogue or deliberation towards any possible future decisions. So that could be all emails, it's really loose, and it's really hard to interpret, so that probably wouldn't be something we'd be bringing to every board meeting, but that is something that we could then have with the fall through of the, you know, obviously that would probably take a lot of time to compile, to dig through if someone's asking for everything on a certain topic. That might be where the clause at the bottom would come into play.
So then I would say the caveat for me would be that we should adopt some type of system that makes it easy to self-manage releasing that as necessary and not having to compile it, like self-compiling or already publicized like it was before on the site, just accessible somehow. Because then we could get around it by just having a copy of that on a digital device at all times of meeting, which is perfectly reasonable to maintain in my opinion.
That was the idea with bringing it to meetings.
Okay. Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. But.
I understand why there'd be concern over that's kind of a pain if you have to on the spot, like bring in. Okay. So then perhaps we would want to revise this and approve it at a later time, or we want to approve parts of it right now?
We do have 2 pending public records requests that I do not know how to respond to, and I really need board guidance on. So this was kind of my proposal to respond to those.
Okay.
And I want to phrase this in a nice way, they are very eager to get the public records as soon as possible.
We can also amend this.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I was gonna say, I'm largely in agreement with everything that's here, and the only change I would make would be at all board meetings or at a mutually agreed upon time. And that's such a small addition that I feel we could approve that next meeting afterwards.
We can approve it
everyone-
now.
Yeah,
Or we could approve it
can
now, if you wanna make that small change.
Yeah, I would happily adopt that. One other thing I want to make sure we discuss at least briefly, if anyone wants to, is I know that there were neighbors that did not like the $15 set at the bottom. So if anyone has thoughts on that, I would also like to.
That's a very reasonable fee, considering what the city costs and, you know, that's likely to be no more than $5. I mean, you're not gonna spend a whole hour generally printing off records unless they're asking for a lot, and if they are, you should be paid for that work.
I should say compiling the records, just so
Yeah.
far, I've probably spent 10 to 15 hours.
Yeah.
So.
And honestly, if we're gonna have to go back and rebuild board email conversations, that's a huge time suck. And there's kind of two things, right? There's the reproduction cost and then there's time.
Yeah.
But was your proposal to get paid yourself, or would that money go to?
Whoever is compiling it, I mean, yeah. Just that the board, I think I worded it that the board can invoice the records requesters. So I'd imagine that whoever is taking care of it would probably be the communications committee, would probably figure that out amongst themselves. I mean, if I was doing the work, I would, you know, it would be nice to have my time compensated if it goes into.
So if money's coming in, we need to have it very clear where it's going.
Yeah, it's currently reimbursement for the Montavilla Neighborhood Association's time, which means that it's probably not for a specific person, it would be coming into our general funds, so.
Or comms. Comms is a separate fund.
Yeah, but that's not to a specific person, that's to a fund, and that's the way it's worded now.
Well, we could designate the record, the person who is responsible for compiling the records for the neighborhood association who can be compensated by the board
Perhaps we
for
could,
doing that work.
yeah, perhaps we could say the secretary shall invoice the record requester for the cost of the record production, plus reimbursement for the M&A's time compiling to be reimbursed to the person, to be reimbursed for, what would be the noun for a person, for the person doing it? Yeah, plus,
Labor?
for the,
Right.
plus, you know, which will be reimbursed to the compiler, or something like that, you know.
Well, I think it sounds like there is enough suggestions. I think it would be good to pass this tonight as written with the first suggestion, the first amendment. And then I would like to see the board revisit it at the next board meeting with any suggestions from you, like for revisions.
So I would like to move again to bring the motion, but with the changes, with the change to bullet 2 to allow for non-meeting times as well. And with the thought that we'll revisit this in the future to make sure that this is a system that's working out and that we are handling the payments that are coming in.
There's contractor tools we can standardize on. For accounting purposes, right, if somebody's trying to scam that, if we're gonna bill somebody, we can say, hey, we're good with these tools that we've already established are good.
Okay.
We'll talk
Should-
about it.
So you are going off a definition in another document, you're referencing it, but can we say that that's the records, that's the records definition that we're referring to? Because I'm kind of concerned about saying that we're gonna have all of, everything that's listed here online. And also I don't want anyone getting the idea that that does include our membership list with addresses. And we can always revisit it, but maybe just add a reference to this definition.
Oh. I think we have one question or a comment.
Yeah, I just
You
was
make it brief.
concerned, or wanted clarification, and I think after I had raised Antigonus, am I saying your name right? Antigonus. I think you brought up or mentioned what my question was gonna be on, is this for, is a board member getting paid? Is it going into a general neighborhood fund to be allocated towards neighborhood things? can that happen? Do we know? Because it sounded like you were saying that you didn't think it could happen.
No, I
And
was
then
just
I'm-
saying that under the current wording, it's going into a general fund and not to a specific person.
Right, and then I'm just concerned that, how do we,
You're reaching a legal issue there.
or how do we keep tabs on who is doing, it just seems like a lot of paperwork to say, oh, is it being frivolously done? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, because now there's money and there's funds and it's going to different people
It's a
for different
volunteer
work.
position.
Well, typically, when you respond to a public records request, I think we would quantify it and give some reasonable expectation of how we arrived at that amount. It's not just some amount that we, throw out $500 per.
I'm not questioning that, I'm just wondering, like, is there clarity for that? So as
I think we're
members
gonna
in neighborhood.
visit that at the next meeting,
Okay.
and I'm really glad that you brought that question, because we will be referencing that question from, when we look at this week's minutes, the next time, we'll make sure to ask that.
Cool, I appreciate it.
Also-
And you had my concern too, or not concern, just concern with clarity, I should say. I don't want to seem like, I just want clarity. So.
Great, thank you. We have a motion.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, so in the language it provided, it says for the labor provided, so I think it does specify that it would be going towards the labor costs. And so I think it would identify specifically what you're talking about there.
If I may, I think it put it very simply, if we're printing out, say, 10,000 pages of resources on data points for crime in a 5-block radius between the years 1995 and 2015, right? And you wanted color graph charts depicting what kind of crime was committed where. Though this is a volunteer position, there is no need for, at least I think, a board member to put up $50 to print charts. And so in the nature of that, I think at least the spirit of what is being talked about there is that you would essentially be paying for the cost of what you're trying to get. It's not that you're paying us, it's that it costs money to make the thing you want. We use the money you give, I imagine, buy it and give it to you, essentially acting as a sort of the middle to get you what you're looking for.
Including labor. Okay, great, so we got a motion, and I didn't hear a second yet. Did we have any other discussion? All right, all in favor of passing the motion?
With
Unanimous?
the
With the amendment?
With
Friendly
the
amendments.
friendly amendment of
Okay.
mutual agreed upon that.
and adding the ONI definition.
All right, excellent. Meeting ground rules, we have another motion draft. Chairman, do you have any This is a draft code of conduct.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out.
Draft it up.
Yeah, we can. Actually,
You want a copy?
Okay, thanks.
So, I think I'm just going to talk about this generally, and then I know that you have some other stuff, and then maybe we can bring this motion, maybe we can form something completely separate from that, but.
Go ahead, you start.
Sure. So I wrote up a draft motion, and I was just saying I'm not stuck to specifically this wording. It does address some things that I think need to be addressed in the current code of conduct. And for some background, the current code of conduct that we adopted is based off of work that I've done with Stumptown Syndicate, another nonprofit that writes code of conducts. And it's an older version that's about 5 years old now. This one is a more updated version to kind of deal with the realities that a lot of people have dealt with, as well as stuff that's specific here in the neighborhood and specific conversations that I've had with neighbors about why they're not coming to meetings because they feel threatened or they don't feel safe. So I don't know if we need, I guess I can just read off the whole thing, it's not too long. In order to create a safe, welcoming, and inclusive neighborhood that serves as a sanctuary for all in our communities, M&A members, volunteers, and directors agree to abide by and enforce the following code of conduct. As neighbors in the Montavilla neighborhood, we pledge to uphold an environment that is inclusive with respect for all members of the community. We are committed to making participation in the neighborhood association and life on our streets an oppression-free experience for everyone, regardless of level of experience, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, personal appearance, body size, economic status, housing status, race, ethnicity, age, religion, or nationality. We define oppression as any language or action that expresses, reinforces, upholds, or sympathizes with any form of systemic social domination. Examples of unacceptable behavior by participants include personal attacks and insulting derogatory comments, public or private oppression, public or private oppressive language or actions, other unethical conduct. Neighbors are empowered and responsible for addressing any abuses of the code of conduct such that the neighborhood and neighborhood association remains an oppression-free experience. So that's the meat of it, but then there's also a piece for enforcement, because that's obviously an important piece. If we can't enforce our code of conduct, then that leads to a lot of options, and that concept comes directly from Safety PDX and the people who have put together code of conducts for events all over town. It's pretty simple now. I'm mostly just saying that the Public Safety Committee should have jurisdiction over that. So abuse of the guidelines written in the Code of Conduct at Montavilla neighborhood events and meetings shall be enforced by 1, a verbal warning, followed by 2, expulsion from an event or meeting. The Public Safety Committee shall be charged with implementing these enforcement guidelines in such a way that is both accountable and mindful of participant safety. By adopting this code of conduct, neighbors and neighborhood association members commit themselves to fairly and consistently applying these principles to every aspect of interactions with the neighborhood association. Neighbors and members who do not follow or enforce the code of conduct may be permanently banned to the fullest extent of ONI guidelines and local law. This code of conduct applies both to neighbors, or both to neighbor and member conduct at M&A events and meetings, but also to public spaces when an individual is representing the Montavilla Neighborhood Association arts community. And then a reporting piece, I suggest through this that we create an email forward for public safety at montavillapdx.com, where people could actually address that, and the Public Safety Committee could be forwarded reports and they could be addressed and followed up upon. So that's my thoughts on that. I think that there's probably lots of input and there's a lot of things there, but I would love to hear. Actually, I don't know if I want to move this for this exact wording, so I would love to have more discussion about it.
Yeah, I love that you put that together. I thought it had a lot of detail, and I, to tell you the truth, have not had enough time to put really thoughtful time into it to come up with any amendments or anything like that. So I would really like to open it up also to some community discussion over the next month, and see if we can get some input on it and kind of put it out there and see how we can revise it and pass it up the next week. Is what I'm looking at. But how do you feel?
I just want to say that I'm extremely happy with all of the included groups that you've put in there, because I feel like I see a lot of inclusivity that may or may not have been present at previous meetings or other neighborhood meetings that I've been to. And I also really, really appreciate that you're giving an avenue for us to be accountable by suggesting that we set up a public safety email, so that if things do occur, people can tell us. I think that's probably the biggest thing that you're actually giving us is a route to handle that. And I'm thankful that you're putting in that effort. I definitely approve it. I looked over it the last couple days.
I read it at length also. I mean, if anything, I think it's a good idea to pass the draft now and then just later revise it as a final draft. Iterative drafts and revisions are something that I have to do a lot, so I see no problem with having a standard set and then you iterate to get it better.
I definitely agree with that.
Just a clarifying point as well. I'm not, for any part of this motion, suggesting that we change any of the bylaws. So this would be just a policy that we could address later.
And this replaces the one that we kind of have floating around.
Yeah. And the wording, if you were to read both, are fairly similar. If you are interested, I added a few more to the list of what things to watch out for. And then I added the enforcement and the closing, and I defined what oppression is, because there's a lot of, in today's political sphere, it seems that there's a lot of debate over semantics and definitions. So just to be very, very clear about what we're talking about.
Was it, I'm trying to remember, I feel like I read that it was supposed to be a verbal warning and then the chair would be the one instead of the public safety committee?
Yeah,
Like that?
I don't think I think that it would just be enforced, but how that raises the question, and we can reword it, but I was thinking more about the enforcement piece, is if someone refuses to leave and they are a safety hazard, what are the steps that we need to take? Like, when do we call the police? When do we, if it, hopefully it never does escalate that far, but when it does, what is our policy for that? And I feel like that should fall under the purview of the Public Safety Committee.
Yeah, and I feel like, Amanda, that conversation should definitely happen as a part of the iterative draft process that Jonathan was talking about.
Sure,
You
that's
know,
fine.
like, we
I
could
was trying to
dedicate an
remember
entire
where I
time to
had
that.
seen that, or if that was something that was established before, but I don't see it in our bylaws.
Yeah, I would hope that, you know, with a verbal warning will be more than enough in most cases, and it probably will be, but this is, you know, worst case scenario, what do we do to make sure we keep people safe?
Yeah, this is definitely something that I think we need to devote a good chunk of time to, because just due to the nature of how serious it is, it needs to be immensely specific, like immensely.
I have a question. Did we have people sign up for the Public Safety Committee during the break? Yeah. Was that one?
No, I have a list.
Oh, you got a list. Okay, good. I was like,
Contacts
oh no.
for- No, yeah, we'll go.
I was wondering if one of the things talking about the Public Safety Committee being charged, and we talked about the interest in having public commentary or more time for public commentary before passing the final draft, so to say. Maybe we could task the newly formed Public Safety Committee with at least some level of outreach in making sure the document's out there and people know that we're interested in commentary and that this is a living document and that we're having a conversation about what inclusivity looks like. And this would be a great time to step up to the table if you have a lot of ideas about inclusivity.
Apologize to the way my brain works. I'm gonna need to just clarify and make sure I understand exactly what you're saying correctly. In other words, you would like the Public Safety Committee to essentially go out, pamphlet, and make sure people are aware of what's going on in the neighborhood.
I wouldn't necessarily think so far as like pamphleting. I was thinking perhaps working in conjunction with the comms and making sure people are just aware online, making sure that the information is out there and that commentary is available.
Okay.
You know, we've talked a lot about making room for people to have as many comments as possible, and I'm just trying to wonder what modeling some of that behavior would look like to y'all. We can save it for another meeting as well. I'm not totally sure exactly where I was going with this, just trying to.
I think it's fabulous. I think we could easily, you know, put out an email or some sort of post about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hear adopt and send out for comment, or table and get comment. Is that the two things?
I motion that we adopt it.
Okay,
I second the motion.
motion seconded.
Can I offer a friendly amendment since I wrote it? Why don't we add, at the top of it, why don't we just state specifically that it's a fluid document and just make that the only change?
Yeah, make it a living document.
Or a living document, however you
Call
want.
it, yeah.
That would actually totally incorporate what I was saying. I think the idea of a living standard of inclusivity is something that just seems really, people are really interested in during the election, you know? It's a conversation that doesn't really seem to end either.
So, yeah, I would offer that as a friendly amendment, maybe just a point at the bottom that says it's a living document. And that is changed to be, you know, can be addressed and changed by the community members in the future.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, just so that we make clear, can we have a motion to
We
adopt
had
it with
to-
a friendly amendment?
Yeah, I amend my nomination to adopt it.
Okay, great.
With the amendment, yeah.
Second.
Yes.
Sorry.
Still stealing your second.
All right, and we have a motion second. Any other discussion? I'll take a quick question from the,
Speaking, were you?
I don't know who you're.
I'll take a quick question from both of you, if you can keep it under 30 seconds.
Speaking to the idea of not resolving it this evening, I want to commend all members and, you know, whoever else has been involved of enforcing or just bringing our attention to the code of conduct, both at the election and tonight. I think people understand, even if they don't, you know all the, you know, whatever's down on the list, they understand. And I think, you know, the group in general has done a good job of making that clear.
Thank you. Next, sir.
I'm very concerned because I think you could be opening yourself up to lawsuits. The American Civil Liberties Union would see much of this language is exceptionally overbroad. And if you in fact did expel somebody, let's say for calling somebody a big mouth blowhard, which I believe they have a right to say, and if you expelled that person because of that, that's free speech, and that in a public setting, that could really set you up for some serious liabilities. I think you need to look at, consult with the ACLU.
Thank you, Michael. I would just say that we would want to specify that it is,
Can I respond to that real quick?
well, I was trying to respond to it really quick about the difference between speech and abuse or disruption. And so there is a line when speech becomes disruption and then it's no longer going to be protected as being free speech if it's disrupting the meeting.
So, just to be perfectly clear, that's a fair point, but under public meeting law, that actually isn't necessarily the case. It's the arbitration of the chair. So if you read it, the way it says it is if there's someone who's being disruptive of the process, however is deemed disruptive by the board chair, they do have the ability to enforce that per public meeting law. And I had to look at all those specifically because of a case I had to deal with. So in any case, you didn't use the grievance process to address that kind of thing.
There have been expulsions from City Hall.
Yeah,
Of a number of people that are friends of mine. They have won in court against City Hall. Let's be aware of that.
Thank you.
Can I have one quick thing? I just want to say when I wrote the part about expelling people, the example that popped into my mind and why I chose those words specifically, because it's come out of other events that I've been at, is there's been domestic violence situations where someone has gotten a restraining order and then someone was excluded from coming because the person that they got the restraining order against was coming to those events, and then they weren't allowed to come even though they were a safety hazard for a person who had a right to be there as well. So it's a very, very hard decision to make, but this gives us some guidance on how we might do that. I would imagine that if someone just called someone a name, we would hopefully be able to de-escalate that before it ever got anywhere as well.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. If you have any more board deliberation before we vote, go for it.
It's not that important.
Who was the woman who was sitting over?
Louis.
Yeah, and she was talking about how they had already neighborhood watch groups going around, and I'd like to get more people involved with that because they already got a structure in place. I think that would be great. And then doing things like working with the neighborhood emergency teams and seeing what they're able to do, like finding out, just kind of feeling where, their limits are and what they can and cannot do, and then just kind of finding out what needs to be done, and then just growing that. So let's see. Just doing more outreach, talking to the community, and finding out just in general what people want, what they need, what they want to see, and kind of just building up, what people want, and then just going from there. Just kind of getting a foundation in place, because I feel that the more information and input we have, the better our city can be. So, that's it. Any other questions?
All right. I believe I have a second on the motion. Further deliberation. Donna, do you have a comment?
No, I think I'm good. I wrote down a lot of notes from when you were speaking earlier, so I am eager for your thoughts on things like warming shelters and stuff. But I think that's all vote.
Okay.
I'm excited for the emphasis on the net teams for sure. I think that's something that we've kind of all tangentially talked about but haven't really had time for. And I think it'd be really exciting to see someone on the team who is going to push that conversation forward.
Yeah, we used to have a liaison to the net team, so if you were interested in such a thing, that would be great.
So we can vote. All in favor of that, honors of the board? Okay. Under the same topic, open board positions. Does anyone else have any motions?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Brad.
I'll second that.
Brad Donahue?
Okay. Second. We have a second? Yep. Any questions for Brad? And again, please, in the issue of time, please keep it something
It's
that
happened to all of
will
us.
either sway your vote one way or the other.
How come Ruth is not running
She's working, and I'm not. Of course, I'm looking for work, so I think it was bigger than her, and she was just putting herself out there to do what she could. So I guess it'll be kind of a team effort.
Two for one.
Yeah.
That's a bonus for us.
That's a sway right there.
Yeah, I got my vote.
I have no other questions.
No.
Okay, motion second, all in favor? Okay. Can we also, won't be staggering the terms between board members? And when we left with, forget which one we were allocated, but we should probably specify that too.
It is.
So for the boards, while they're looking, this time with the board election, half the board is being elected for 2-year terms and half is being elected for 1-year terms, so that there's a staggered board, so that there's not a whole, everybody's not just leaving all at once. I took one of the 1 years on a short time.
Agenda item 3, ongoing, term commitment questions before. Olivia, 2 years. Who's correct? Johnny, 2 years. Briar Rose, 2 years. Antigonus Jarrett, 2 years. David, 1 year. Jonathan, 1 year. Amanda, 1 year. Motion recorded as a single vote. Johnny motions, Olivia seconds. The vote is unanimous.
So did the two of you have a preference for a 1-year term or a 2-year term?
Either is open.
Yep, yeah. And we're
I'll start
trying to
with
keep a
1 year.
rough distribution between them.
I'll do 2.
Okay, so we got 2 and 1? Excellent. Thank you.
I just wanted to point out, because there are 2 minutes other people, just looking back at our minutes, that self-nominated, Lucy Elizabeth and Paul Rowland. I think both of them are great people, but I would be very open to trying to get more people of color on our board. I think that that's a big gap that we currently have, so that might be something that I might be wanting to wait before we fill this position.
Okay.
Another thing that we might try doing is, I know I'm going to be doing this, is going around to different organizations, perhaps that have people that are stepping back, and finding out if they have any time or interest in coming and joining the M&A.
Well, do we have any more motions under this topic?
I do feel like we should wait and/or do both. We should wait and strike up the conversation about what structure we can get besides just the board itself, right? Like, if there's districts and things we can talk about in that way. I know we talked about liaisons to different 501s also. So maybe that's probably a conversation first.
Great. I am not hearing any more motions under this topic, so I'm going to close it and move to the next one, committee chair appointments. And I'm going to try and get through this as quick as possible. So, I'm sorry?
I just have a quick point of information. I didn't have to notice when we were going through all that list, everyone including the newest people, except for Micah has their number of years.
I nominated for 2 years.
You just nominated for that? How do you nominate?
What's it? Isn't that mine? I'm gonna have to go for 1 year, as I have no idea what the next one's gonna look like at this point in time. And it would be irresponsible for me to promise more than I think I could.
Well, the other thing is that you can quit at any time. Or, right?
Let's help with that paperwork.
I can rescind for like.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, great. So I'm jumping on the first one. We had an outreach committee, which looked pretty well staffed. And it looks like Briar Rose and myself both volunteered to co-chair. And so, do we need any motions for those to appoint the board chair or committee chairs? Okay.
I mean, we can just for more benefit.
Yeah, just for the notes as well, I noted this on there as well. I've been doing a lot of the tech stuff and that's my background, so I've joined the outreach committee to mostly do that, and I'll be taking that on kind of as one of the co-chairs, and then I'm getting into a little bit more of the messaging and that kind of stuff.
Maybe let's vote to affirm.
Okay. I'll make a motion, I'll entertain a motion from someone else.
I motion to affirm what we've written down here so they're in the notes and so we can read them out loud so we sound super cool and official.
On the outreach committee?
On the outreach committee, I actually don't know. It's, yeah, who's chair and who's co-chair?
Yeah.
Oh, we have co-chairs, got it. Cool. David Breyer's co-chairs.
Excellent. It looks like we have a constituted housing and homelessness committee.
Yes, and I would like to chair that committee once again. I feel even more prepared for it this time around, as this is now my full-time job as an outreach case manager. Yeah, so
I
I'd
would
like to.
affirm John as the housing and homelessness. All in favor?
Yeah, we did it. We actually did that.
Public safety. Looks like you guys have public safety. Did you guys decide on the chair?
Or are you the chair?
Wait, John.
Come join us. Any other discussion? Did you want to be chair? You guys want to fight it out?
You're interested? Yeah, the two people who were affirmed to the board, you're welcome to come and join us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can vote and participate.
Oh, yeah, Brad, yeah.
Yeah, forgot about that, sorry.
Yeah, you can come join. I move to affirm John as the public safety chair.
Second.
All in favor? Alright. Did we get a parks committee? Didn't look like it.
No.
I'm very interested in that, so I would just like to say that if people are interested in doing parks work, I am very interested in that, and I would love to work with any neighbors that want to do that, so please email me.
I would also be interested too.
Parks work being defined as well.
Organizing, community gardens, tree plantings, as someone might have suggested, a lot more plantings of fruit and nut trees, any of that sort. I think we have a small garden stand at Marvin or something, so,
The Montavilla.
community farm.
I've actually met with Alyssa already.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So yeah, just kind of any organizing green space at all, however you can, anyone would conceive it.
Or liaising with parks?
Yeah. That would be a good one as well.
So I guess because it was so small, if people are interested in that, I'm willing to be the board contact for that, and if there are more people later on, we can form it into an official committee at a later time.
Excellent. So noted, so I believe, I'm sorry?
I mean, I'd like to do it.
Briar Rose was just volunteering to be the contact person so far
Okay.
for anybody who would like to constitute the Parks Committee in the future.
You are doing a whole lot. If you'd like, I can take that up. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, let the video and the minutes show Jonathan volunteered for that.
Parks liaison.
Yeah.
You are tasked with forming a committee now.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Okay, the last one, land use committee?
Yeah, land use and transportation maybe?
Okay.
Yes, I volunteer to be chair of that committee.
Is there any discussion necessary for a delegated authority?
So, this is something I've been, looking into. So it really depends on how this is set up, depending on what neighborhood association that you're in. Some neighborhood associations, like Montavilla in the past, all kind of decisions have run through the board. Other neighborhood associations have kind of given some delegated powers to the land use committee, because they're getting kind of some more training and in-depth stuff on the issues, and they're gonna be having meetings with the developers, and there are timeline issues with land use cases and sometimes with the long-range planning. So I don't have any proposal tonight, but I'll be talking to the group of 6 or so people about what makes sense for us, and I've been looking at other neighborhood association agreements that they have with their land use committees for, people just signing like letters in response to things just from the committee versus the whole board.
Did you say you were already interested in sharing that? You are?
Yes.
Okay. So the residential info project, are you rest of that 20th of this month is the last day for commentary?
They extended it to the 30th, but yes.
Beautiful.
Okay, so was that with delegated authority?
I can bring a proposal next month when there are, we have in our bylaws, we have this committee with board authority provision for committees. It does say that 2 or more directors need to be on the board. So we can talk about whether anyone wants to join me or whether having the chair being a de facto counts. I don't know that that would.
Now, if a board member is interested in committee, is it more than just membership? Is it like co-chairing or something like that?
I don't think you have to do that if you're, yeah, it's not a requirement that you have to.
So in other words, I can kind of liaison with that just
Yeah.
as a member of the M&A?
Yes, absolutely. Or as another board.
Yeah.
I move to appoint Amanda chair of land use and transportation.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Excellent. Did anyone else want to form a committee?
We needed to get a couple more people on our steering committee, David.
I don't like that idea. I like the steering committee to be a committee of one, because if we make a steering committee, it must post meetings, must get notice, and it must have open meetings, which makes it impossible to facilitate actually getting a good agenda out.
For the record, the steering committee sets the agenda.
Right.
Right.
Sets the agenda.
I don't think it requires, because if you're not deliberating, I don't think you have to have, you don't have to apply public meeting law. We had a special meeting that wasn't before that, it was just a discussion with neighbors to get the agenda set, and then that's still deliberated on by the chair. So like the chair has final say as it's written in the bylaw.
I don't see how you could
Basically, it's like.
set the agenda without deliberating issues.
It's, the arbitration is given to the chair, but you can have a meeting with the steering committee, which we amended on June 12th to include 3 to 5 neighbors, or up to 5 neighbors. So effectively, you can take counsel from 5 neighbors and sit down and have the initiated. Per the notes in 612. But we don't have to do that at all. I think there's other ways to make this be better.
I don't see the reason. Again, I'm open to anybody, any suggestions. It just seems facilitating wise and in terms of limiting how many meetings we have to hold every month. I would hope that the board could trust me in making the agenda with all your input. And if we at any point do not agree, then we can form a steering committee of more than just me.
I agree, sir.
I think it might also be good to add to the website, which I can bring up at our communications meeting, about a point about contacting you to bring up to propose agenda items, so community members have a point that any neighbor, if they want to bring up a point, they'll be able to contact you and have a clear route to go through that.
Yeah, and I think we could also have a check of having the vice chair included on those emails so that there's a check on it, so that somebody knows if I didn't bring up something that somebody requested, somebody else would be getting those emails, so I couldn't just kind of ignore somebody.
So real quick, just as an aside, one of the things that I kind of try to keep bringing up is that Lumia program or software like it. Maybe in the future what we can do is have a section that's set by the community through something like that, just by metrics, so you don't even have to meter emails, because simply just like processing the information takes up time. It's hard to actually assess all emails that are incoming, and just taking on more is a bit of a problem. So like, if we had a self-managing system of engagement that could bring up topics, that'd be easier. So we can talk about that when we get to it, but that's the idea, is being much easier for the chair. And it just has its own section opposed to the agenda.
I don't know what you're talking about, but it sounds great.
Okay, good. We'll go to it later.
Okay, was there any other discussion on that issue? I believe we're in new business. We need 3 bank account signers, the chair, the vice chair, and the treasurer is what I believe. And so I would entertain a motion to designate those 3 as the signers on the thing.
I would like to make that motion.
I second the motion.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but traditionally, the treasurer is not a signer.
Yes, I was getting to that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
It's non-competitive best practice to have the treasurer not be the person signing the checks, because I am the person writing the checks.
Okay.
Segregation of duties.
I was wondering if it was the treasurer and the secretary, so would we like, should we switch it to the secretary?
Probably.
Okay. Okay, then,
I will
We need
motion
to motion.
that is the chair, the vice chair, the secretary, we added the account assignment.
And second that motion.
second by Olivia, any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Any outstanding purchases, and I know, are you the only one left from the elections committee? Can you just briefly, really quick mention, what we owe for the facilitator?
Hold up, there's an itemized breakdown, and we already pre-approved the budget, we just have to go cut a check.
Okay, cool, yeah, I was just wondering if we wanted to just kind of, do we want to ratify or?
We've already talked about it a few times, so we're all, we should pay.
Okay.
I'll get you the invoice, like it's
Because the
all.
money hasn't been given out, I guess, is my concern, it seems like we didn't get. So I think.
Let's just ratify the disbursement. I don't think there's any disagreement that we're gonna pay what we promised to pay for the elections. Yeah. So I move to reaffirm all the approved purchases for the election for the facilitator.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Great. Jonathan, did you want to bring up anything about your Lumio
If we have time.
proposal?
I mean,
If we have time, we're 8 minutes over.
yeah, I can bring it up in an actual proposal, I don't know.
Excellent. Then next meetings, do we have anybody on the board have a problem with the meeting setup, combining the board meeting and the membership meeting? Do we want to make them separate? Just any comments on that?
What is the difference between the board meeting and the membership?
The membership meeting is kind of more where we are addressing the membership, we are updating them on what we're doing, we're outreaching, whereas the board is kind of more business.
All this motion stuff.
All the motions that, just board business that we have to pass.
I like having a live studio audience.
Okay, great.
Once a month.
Then that's how we're gonna set it so far, is the second Monday, a combined meeting.
Are we gonna?
Unless the agendas get too large, in which case I will have to call a separate board.
Yeah, special meetings happen. So are we gonna continue, to do this new switch schedule with the board meeting second and the general meeting first?
Unless I have any
I actually like it.
Yeah, I think it's
Nice to
good.
get people out early.
Yeah, it saves people time.
Okay,
I would like to meet next month. I feel like we're just getting started and, we don't normally have a December meeting, but should we just keep going with the second Monday for now?
Are we going to have quorum? I guess I just want to make sure people are going to be here.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I may not be here.
And what is it for? Over 50%?
Yes.
Sounds like it.
if anybody has any scheduled things, come up with
Monday works best for me.
Then, before we adjourn, would anyone like to make any last comments before we end this meeting? Yes.
Hi, I'm Molly from Southeast Uplift, so I came to say hi to you guys.
Good to see you. Thanks for
Hi
coming.
everybody, I brought some cookies as well. And then, board members, I need to get your contact information, for the Southeast Uplift records.
Absolutely.
I thought I forwarded that email from Jay, but maybe I didn't, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
Just a quick comment, I want to say, just on this meeting, I love the job you do, David, as the chair, and I'm disappointed that you've only wanted 1 year, because as indication from this meeting, you're doing a great job. So I want to know, is that set in stone? Could you change your mind? And also for other members, is that set in stone? So that's a legitimate question, actually.
It's set in stone in terms of I would have to stand for re-election. I do not currently have any plans to leave Montavilla. I'm a renter, so it's always a reality.
As a personal thing, I just think, I like, from indication of this meeting, you're doing a great job, and I'm disappointed to hear that you're only doing 1 year, I guess is what I'm saying. But anyway, I thank you guys.
I also like to share the job around too.
And here's campaign speech in case that's
Great, Michael?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for a good meeting. I think things went really well this evening, and I just want to be
Elections Committee has two portions of the report. One is the report itself with those kinds of attachments, and then one is the specific list, the membership list that are the people who signed up as members from the sign-in sheets. Am I correct in assuming that the membership list goes to secretary and the rest of the report goes to the chair and vice chair, then to get out to you all?
If it doesn't,
Is
if
that
it
correct?
helps, I would say, please just send it to the chair and vice chair, and I'll distribute it. But if you want to CC Briar Rose on it, that's fine as well. But I definitely am very interested in all of that information.
Just thinking about lanes and making sure that we don't overload any one culture, one person, so making sure, okay. And my last thing is, you are the board and it needs to fit your schedule, but, please consider Sundays. Please consider Sundays.
Actually, I would second that idea, if we're doing just one day.
We can take some input on
Yeah.
scheduling different meetings. And also, if people hear about people who really want meetings scheduled in different parts of the neighborhood, please tell them to be open about that too, because we are open into changing the location
Yes.
if necessary.
Can I make a comment quickly? Could each of the respective...
If it includes a motion to adjourn.
It does. I would like that the people who are chairing the subcommittees list out functionally like what they want them to do, because then at the next meeting we'd like to do a sidewalk that lays them all nicely together, and we have a nice relational diagram that shows that, and that'll make it easy for people to plug in and contact people. It'll cut out a lot of problems early on. With that, can we adjourn? Make a motion for it.
I second the motion to adjourn.
All right.
All in favor?
All in favor?
We did it.
Hey,